So, got it. Really excited to talk to you guys about group therapy. This is something that I am really passionate about. I've been doing it for the last 5.5, 6 years or so. It was daunting at first, but I've come to love it. I've come to see the benefits behind it, and I hope that by the end, you guys will as well. But before really getting into it, what I'd like to do is just kind of introduce myself to you guys and give a little bit of background about me so that you know who I am, where I come from, and why you should listen to me. But I'm originally from California. I was born and raised in San Diego. So I'm definitely a beach girl through and through. So much so that whenever somebody here in Utah says or suggests that I go to the beach, I'm just like, oh, there's no beach in Utah. It's a little depressing, but there's a lot that I do love about Utah, and that is the mountains. I initially came out here about 15 years ago to attend BYU, and I majored in biology. So how the heck did I become a therapist? By majoring in biology. Well, I actually spent the first 2 years for college working as a high school biology teacher.
It's weird because I know I have things.
Turn that down.
Maybe I dress it.
My volume down. And now see. So I spent the first 2 years out of school as a high school biology teacher, and it took 2 years for me to realize that that was not what I wanted to do. I love the kids, I love biology, and not teach biology, because the reality was the kids didn't care about it. So I went back to school initially to be a school counselor. That took me out to Oklahoma, where I went to the University of Oklahoma, and I got a master's of education in professional counseling. And then right out of school, instead of doing school counseling, I ended up being a substance abuse and mental health therapist. And that is why I've been doing group therapy for the last 6 years. That is if you have any experience with substance abuse, and you know that that's the primary treatment modality is group therapy. So I've been doing it for a while. I just joined the team here at Proto Canyon about the beginning of August, and it's a little different for me because the population here is primarily, their primary diagnosis is mental health and not substance use, so it's different for me, but it is still fun, and I'm loving it. On the note of fun, I am a firm believer that laughter is the best medicine, and so I have a video that I want to show you guys, just a little demonstration, I guess, if you will, of the group therapy process that I personally find amusing, and so hopefully you guys do too. And hopefully we don't run into any technical difficulties with this.
Tanya, the sound is not turned on. There's no sound.
Oh no. Okay, do you guys know how to? If I stop the share. I could just pull up YouTube. That's where I got it from. All right. Well, we're going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to pull it up directly on YouTube and see if you guys can view it that way. Oops. and I am going to just.
Well, you must be new. I'm Lou.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sam. I never done the whole group therapy thing before. I'm a little nervous.
Oh, well, I was nervous too my first day, but Dr. Hamill is so great. He's really helped me out a lot. I've recently gone through a divorce.
I recently got divorced too. I just signed my papers in the hallway just before I came in, so mine's just a little more recent than yours. So I'm just divorcing a bunch of things and like tons of people right now.
Okay, well, I'm Lou, and this is Sam. Nice to meet you.
I'm Penelope.
It's my first day too.
It's my second first day too. So
I guess we'll watch out for each other.
yeah, I'll probably watch out a little better than you though, because my vision's really good. So I also have like 20/80 vision, so I have cat eyes. I can like see through things and planets and stuff.
Okay, everyone, 7 on the dot. That means you should all be in your chairs.
Everyone get in your chairs right now, so it's 7 on the dot, so we're starting.
Everyone, welcome back. As you can see, we have a couple new faces here, Sam and Penelope. Now, I know it can be intimidating on your first day, so what I like to do is just have you observe for a bit, get comfortable, see how this works. Good? Okay. Last week, we left off with Bob. Bob, you were talking about some of the anger issues you were having with your neighbor.
Yeah, it is getting worse. Last night, he was playing the drums until 1 in the morning, and I found myself getting really angry and standing in my hallway holding a golf club ready to just...
I got really angry at my neighbor too once. So I was standing in a really big hallway and I was holding a golf cart. Tiger Woods was sitting in it. He told me I was pretty and he's at my house right now. He's cleaning.
I'm sorry, Penelope? We don't allow crosstalk at this meeting. Thank you. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Dr. Hamill.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hamill, too. Thanks to all the doctors in the world. So much more.
Oh, Dr. Hamill. I'm finding her very distracting.
Yeah, I really think I want to punch her in the face.
All right, everyone, let's just take a deep breath.
I already took 2 breaths, too. So I can breathe so deep that I can move furniture with my breath. So I rearranged my whole house that way. So I just
Okay, let's try to get back on track. Sam, you okay?
Dr. Hamill, I'm feeling really anxious. I need some air. I need to go outside. I think, actually, I'm sorry. I think I'm having a panic attack.
I'm having a panic attack, too. My panic attack's having a panic attack. It's called a panic attack. It's worse.
Sam, Penelope, sit down. Please have a seat. Penelope, I am running this show, not you. I shouldn't say this, but you are driving me nuts.
Oh, I drive myself nuts. Yeah, I drive myself, actually, in a nut car, so. My car's a nut. I do promotional work for planners, so. It's a Mr. Peanut on wheels. The windshield is a monocle, and the convertible roof is a top hat, so. It's parked outside.
Sit. I think we could all use a break. You know what? I've got a good idea. I'll play a DVD. It'll help you find ways to relieve stress in situations like this. These methods really work, too.
Welcome. Everyone has stress.
I have stress too. So one time my hair fell out.
Okay, that's it. Penelope, I'm asking you to leave.
Dr. Hamill, I don't feel so good.
I don't feel so good either. So I have a fever of 161. Here's a thermometer.
Penelope, stop or I'm going to call security.
I am security. So you guys having a problem in here?
You're security. Really? Well, good for you, Penelope, because you know who I am? I'm the guy who wrote The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Know that? Huh? I'm the inventor of the air mattress, Penelope. Also, Oprah and I have a secret marriage that lasts 6 years. And you know what else? I'm best friends with a banana. So, what do you think about that? What do you say about that?
Well, I guess all I can say is Benjamin Button was based on me. I'm 70 years old. So I'm gonna die an old lady baby. And I invented air, so every time you breathe, you owe me 10 cents. And I married Oprah's best friend Gail and Stedman and Dr. Oz, and our wedding was at Harpo Studios. And I used to be a puppet. I was on Fraggle Rock. And my 2 best friends are Tomato and Liza Minnelli.
that's it. Let's get some coffee, everybody. Why don't we meet back here in 15 minutes?
Look, Tomato and I want to hit the town. You know, here, girls' night out, Sex in the City style. Penelope, you're my best friend, and I'm gonna buy you all the non-alcoholic beer you can handle. Let's go.
I'm really thirsty.
Oh, I'm thirstier.
Well, I was thirsty the day before.
But I was thirstier in the
Okay. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. I love some SNL. And doesn't that just like totally get you excited and wanting to do group therapy? I mean, I know I do. But. All right, let's get back on track. So that was a little bit of an exaggeration of the group therapy process, but there are a few truths that I think that we can pull from it, and we'll get to those as we go throughout the presentation. But on that note, I just want to make you guys aware of kind of what the objectives are for today, what I hope you walk away from this with. First, I want you guys to be able to identify the two main types of group processes, and then understanding both the pros and the cons to group, because as much as I love group and I think it's important, there are some limitations to them. And then lastly, hopefully you guys will be able to identify who would be appropriate for group and who's not appropriate for group. And then I have a fourth unofficial objective, and that is just to instill in all of you a very deep and unbridled love for the group process. So hopefully that works out. Okay, so two main types of groups. I think that all therapeutic groups can really be categorized into one of two types. You have your psychoeducational groups, and you have your process-oriented groups. I like to think of the psychoeducational groups as having a very specific topic. They are, as you might have guessed, educational in nature. So I'm running one of these groups. I have a topic. Oftentimes I have a pre-designed curriculum. I'm going to go in and I'm going to teach the client something. I drive the discussion. I have a specific end goal in mind for them. With process-oriented groups, they are very different. You don't necessarily have a topic, but rather you allow your clients to kind of guide the discussion. They talk more about the things that they need to address on a day-to-day basis. They share feedback with one another. They learn from each other. So really it's the clients that are taking an active role as teachers. Now I'm going to mix it up a little bit, because while there are differences between these two types of groups, they actually go very much hand in hand. And I have found from my experience that if you run a group well, there is process inherent in psychoeducational groups, and there is psychoeducation inherent in process groups. I've run many process-oriented groups with the substance abuse population, where the clients who are not necessarily the healthiest individuals will do what I like to call co-signing each other's BS. And it's times like that requires the facilitator to jump in with some of that education and redirect and let them know that, like, hey, this probably isn't the healthiest behavior, and show them an alternative. So that's just one example of how you'll have a little bit of both involved in whatever group you're running. Oh, okay, so I was assured that we have a really good group of proactive and engaged learners on here who would eliminate the need for my technologically challenged self to attempt to initiate breakout rooms. So in other words, I'm expecting some discussion here. I want to hear from you guys, and I want to know, now that we've just kind of covered just the types of groups that there are, what do you guys perceive to be the benefits and the limitations of group therapy? And if you are not comfortable with talking, like unmuting and talking to yourself, you're welcome to put stuff into the chat and we can go from there. But I want to hear any questions that you might have or thoughts that you have on these two questions.
Right there. So I can attach it right here. I could do that. Do admin have a page? I mean, I could make an admin page here. Here's the thing that I think we have to be able to figure out is, well, if as long as it's a Google Doc and we set the setting that only WASH K-12 people can access, because I just worry about putting stuff on there that public can access. But if it's a Google Doc and our setting is WASH K-12, then they should be able to. So I can put an admin tab here and just locate it there. Should I do that? I think so, because
Just a heads up for Tammy C. I think that your microphone is on.
because you know they're all on the team, and if we break it down, you know, all the links are on that one page. I'm like, let me go back and see what I can figure out. Yeah, I can add it here. That's no problem. It's just because this
I'm not
is
talking about
to show me where you're at. So when they ask, I'll go, okay, let me show you. So it's just going to be departments, and then they have to go to.
Well, let's just do this through the chat then. If anybody has thoughts.
Sorry, everyone. I'm trying to look through to see who's unmuted, but I'm not seeing anybody unmuted.
I think I think of this as an MTSS where they're supposed to be able to see all those links and tier 1, 2, 3. Because we're going to explain the pyramid, but they want the steps. I'm just wondering if I would just like an MTSS tab. You know what I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just fine to be here.
Yes, those are huge. Knowing that there are other people on that journey with you. I mean, we'll talk more about that later on, but that is so huge. I can't even begin to tell you the difference that alone I've seen make in people's life, is knowing that they have people to kind of empathize with them and who are going through similar things. What other thoughts do you guys have? Yes, learning from other people's experiences. And then I just saw above that somebody had said that one of the limitations is that confidentiality cannot be kept 100%. And that is a huge concern. And we can talk about how to address that because that's definitely come up in groups that I've done. Any other thoughts? Yes. Someone holding back, you definitely can get in group those, I guess, if you want to call them wallflowers, people who will remain in the shadows if you let them, if you don't pull them out and prompt them. And that can definitely, I'm not gonna say that they can't get some benefit from it still, but that can definitely be a limitation, is they might get overlooked. Another limitation, there tends to be one-upping nature, where people, well, we saw that with Penelope for sure, where see response given for initiation, and then they want the same type of feedback, so they create, it's going too fast for me, a fabricated scenario. Feeling that they need to put on a face to be accepted into the group. Hey, you guys have come up with some really good both benefits and limitations. I mean, the list could keep going, I'm sure. But just for the sake of time and because we ran into so many technical difficulties, I want to make sure that we get to some the other stuff in the presentation.
So what happened, can I explain what happened? Me and my mom are both members, and we went to a presentation in Branson.
And I don't know if everybody is aware of who Ervin Yalum is. He is not technically known as the father of group therapy, but I personally think that he should be. He's done a lot of research and work in group therapy. He's written books on it. And throughout the course of his work, he developed a list of 11 therapeutic factors that he observed and witnessed in the group setting. Things that help the people to heal and benefit them. And so I just kind of want to go through each of these and talk a little bit more about them, give you some real life examples of how I've seen these play out in the therapeutic process.
Sorry about this, everybody. I stepped in the other room because of the issues, and I'm getting a text that her computer died. So here's the question. Does this happen to everybody when they're doing these? The wonderful things of computer technology. So let me ask this while she's getting going. Who out of everybody, open your chats. Are you doing any group therapy in your practices, in any of your businesses?
So I'm at the Children's Justice Center, and that's one of my main responsibilities. We have children's groups and we have parent groups. We have a women's survivor group. So yeah, groups every week, all the time, groups.
Are you doing it when you're doing the group therapy? Are you doing it with parents, like a parents meeting, or just with the?
Just with the what? The kids?
Just with the kids.
So we have different age ranges for the kids, and then we have a parent group that meets at the same time. And
same time?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, let me 1 second. Let me just. Okay. So without breaking too much, how's your group running? That was Kelly, right? How's your group running? Do you feel it's a struggle to get participation in it? Do you feel they open up easier?
Well, I probably, the one I could answer the best on is our women's survivor group, because I do run that. Our other groups are run by other, therapists here, but sometimes it depends. Depends on just the dynamic, and it depends on the personality. Sometimes you have people that really engage and talk a lot and almost too much. And sometimes you have those that sit back and are quieter, and you kind of have to ask questions specifically and kind of engage them. So it's always just, since it's an open group, it's different, dynamic. And yeah, it depends. And I've noticed though that the more people you have, the more engaged they will tend to be. The fewer there are, the harder it is for them to open up sometimes. So yeah, it just depends.
Okay. And I have to say, I've been involved in a few of the IOP groups here at the hospital, and we did during the summer, the numbers dropped down, and then they pick back up, and it fluctuates depending on where they are in the programs and their processes. I can say, it seems like in the last 2 weeks, the numbers have really increased. I've been very impressed with the results that I can see in the IOP groups. I mean, when you can get them to participate, they really, you can see the growth. And I know a lot of you probably can say you experience this, that you see the growth in them. They may not see it in themselves, but you see how they've changed from week to week and month to month as they experience that. But I've really been impressed because of that, that this is it's a tool that we need to definitely have in our box to help our patients. What are some things that are stopping? There's a few people that are saying things like, I've done it a little, want to do more, did it prior to COVID, not currently doing it. What obstacles are stopping you from doing that group therapy? Or what do you see that's keeping you from doing it if it's something you're wanting to do?
Michael, this is Cleola. One of the things that is stopping us a little bit is how to charge for it and how to get insurances to pay for it. And we contract with Medicaid through Southwest, trying to get them to pay to where it makes it worth our time to try to do that. I would love any suggestions.
Okay. I'm waiting to see if someone else has a suggestion or if there's even other things. I don't want to ignore that by any means. Are you back, Tanya?
Okay, yes, I think I'm back. Can you hear me okay?
We'll come back to some of this discussion towards the end, but let's get through this and we'll talk about this some more. So go ahead.
Okay, so sorry about that. I got no warning from my laptop whatsoever that it was about to shut off. Okay, so I had just started with Yalum's therapeutic factors, and some of these you guys had already touched on when you were listing benefits and limitations. So universality, right? Everybody wants to know that they're not alone, that they have someone else that's going through the same things that they're going through. And actually, literally just last week, I had a client in group who shared that she was so surprised that despite how different everyone in group, their problems were, they were all coping in the same unhealthy ways. And it blew her mind that there was this similarity between all of them. She felt so alone for so long, and shaming herself for reacting in certain ways when the reality is she was not alone. And a lot of people cope the same way that she does. Altruism. Unless you're a bona fide sociopath, I don't know anybody who does not like helping other people. And this is something that, we see in the group. You watch people give feedback to others or, share a story of theirs that they feel relates to somebody else. And when their advice or their feedback helps somebody, it totally changes that person who shared when they felt like they could help somebody else. So altruism, definitely a thing in groups. The installation of hope. I cannot tell you how many times I have run a group where I have heard one client in addressing another client use the exact phrase, "Seeing you do so well gives me hope that I can do it too." You have in a group, depending on the group that you have, people that are all in different phases of their healing, of their recovery. So you have some that are there that have been doing it for a while and maybe have some of it down and have some healthy coping strategies. And then you have newcomers who haven't done it before at all and have no idea where to start. And they can look at those that are further along and see that, if they can do it, so can I. And that gives them some hope. Imparting information. I feel like this one's pretty straightforward. You can have the therapist imparting information. You can also have the client imparting information. And actually, I have a really good story on this one. Several months back, I had a client who I had him for an individual session before a group session. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but in this individual session, I gave him some feedback, or I don't remember what it was about. I mentioned something and he just kind of was like nodded like, okay, yeah. And then we went into group, and I kid you not 30 minutes later, another client in the group said the exact same thing to him, almost verbatim, that I had said in the individual session. And it was like mind blown. This guy was like, that makes so much sense. And I was like, what? I just said that to you. So it just goes to show the power that comes from the groups. You know, you can hear something from one person, but hearing it from multiple people, and especially when those people are people that you consider to be your peers, has such a drastic impact. So, and that has happened more than one time to me. And I'm sure it's happened to plenty of you. Next, developing social skills. I would like to bring your attention back to the video at the beginning. I think that we can all safely agree that Penelope was definitely lacking in some serious social skills. And this is not uncommon in the group setting. Actually, it's pretty common to get people who just, they don't have any boundaries, or they're trying to do that one-upping. And the group offers an opportunity to teach those clients how to respond in healthier ways. In fact, in that video, I think one of the other clients in the group responded, and I think his exact words, "She is making me very uncomfortable." So it provides an opportunity for clients to hear how they're being received by others, and then kind of alter their behavior and accordingly to develop those skills that are necessary. Next, interpersonal learning. Just like imparting information, I think that this one is pretty straightforward. Clients can gain insight not just from direct feedback, and this is where the wallflower people come into play. I think sometimes we think that somebody has to be talking or engaged in order to be getting something out of the group, when the reality is a lot of people can actually learn things about themselves just from watching others interact. So you might have a client who's quiet all the time in group, but they might be watching two other clients interact, or another client and the therapist interact, and they're learning something about themselves in the process because they're seeing some of their own patterns play out in front of them, and they're realizing, oh, hey, maybe that needs to change. Cohesion. I was actually just reflecting on this one last night. So I started an IOP group here just 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we started this group, so it hasn't been very long. And yet in that short amount of time, just 2 weeks, I have watched these 6 clients that I have go from sitting, very rigidly in their chairs and anxiously shaking their leg and not wanting to talk, to coming into group, plopping down, immediately engaging in conversation with each other, and just being very relaxed because they feel like they belong. They feel like they have a place to go where they're going to be accepted. And this is such a huge one. Some of these people have never had that. They've never had a sense of belonging or feeling accepted. So I thought, in a word, that's incredible to me that can happen so quickly for these people. They have this common goal. These guys are all working together to better themselves, better their mental health, and they feel it, and it makes a difference. Catharsis. This one, who doesn't like to vent, right? I like venting. I have another story for you though on this one. And this one happened also just last night. We had a client come into group who was very visibly just distressed, having a hard time. And eventually the group was able to get her to kind of start opening up, and she just broke down. And the difference in her affect after just sharing one thing that she is currently going through, the difference was palpable. And everybody in the group commented on it. All the other clients said, "You just look so much lighter. You look so much more free." And she said that she felt free. She said, even when I stood up and walked across the room, like I felt just lighter. She's like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And I think everybody assured her that that was a good thing, because that catharsis, just being able to release what it is that you're holding on to. Without, and notable was that nobody solved her problem. Nobody made it go away. It was just being able to share it that was therapeutic for her. Next is imitative behavior. Again, pretty straightforward. I think people can learn not only from watching the others in group, but also watching the therapist and begin to imitate those behaviors, whether it's behaviors they observe directly in the group or behaviors that are talked about in the group. So if somebody is sharing a story about something they did to cope with some distressful situation in their life, somebody else in the group can take that and imitate that behavior in their own life to cope with whatever they're going through. We're on the last two. Sorry, I'm keeping an eye on the time. Existential factors. So not only do the clients realize while they're in group that they are responsible for their own lives, their own actions, their own choices, but that they start to grow and learn that despite pain, despite death, despite sadness, regret, loss, all those things that we go through, they start to learn that life goes on and they can accept these conditions as a part of life without having to avoid or escape. And then lastly, my favorite, try saying this 5 times fast, is the corrective recapitulation of the primary family group. In a nutshell, transference. When a client starts to behave or respond to somebody else in the group or the therapist in a way, engaging transference, it provides an opportunity for them to learn and correct that behavior. I'll give you guys another example of this. So believe it or not, I have had a few clients over the course of my 6 years practicing who have not liked me. And I know it's shocking because I like to think of myself as a very likable person. But there's one client in particular who comes to mind for me. We had a group session where I provided some feedback to this individual. I don't remember what the feedback was, but I do remember that it was not well received. He got very offended and was very upset. And the rest of the group members had to reassure him, like, I think you're taking that totally the wrong way. And I don't think that's what she meant at all. And it took a little while and a little prompting, a little digging for us to eventually get to the realization that he was responding to me, or he viewed me as his mother in that moment, and he was responding to me accordingly. And so he made that realization in group and then was able to begin correcting that behavior and viewing me as a separate entity, not his mom. Okay, before I go on, do we have any comments or questions so far? Is the volume turned up on this so that I can? Let's see. Okay. Any comments, questions? Oh, really? You guys weren't seeing my screen apparently. Okay. Can somebody tell me what slide you're seeing right now? Actually, let me, here, I'll, Kelly Stout, because I can see you. Can you unmute, tell me what slide you're seeing?
Yeah, it's just on the Yalum's therapeutic. You're not in presentation mode. So we're seeing all of your slides on the left instead of just your main slide.
Oh, how did that happen?
When you switch the computer, you're on 3 different screens. So you just, when you were talking, you were looking at a different screen than what we were looking at.
Gotcha. Okay, so you guys can see everything, but right now the big one for you guys is existential factors and corrective recapitulation. Okay.
Yes, if you go down to the bottom on the right and hit just to the right, hit that one, it should change it to presentation. I don't know why it's not.
Well, so, and it is in presentation mode on one of the screens. You guys just can't see it. So okay.
She's got 3 screens in there and she's just chosen screen 2 instead of screen 3.
Okay. So we'll go on, and I'll just click on this screen so that you guys can see what, there we go. All right. So some additional benefits, and some of these are things that you guys had already mentioned. Obviously, as a therapist, I am a huge proponent of therapy. I think that everybody should do it. I essentially want to be like the Oprah Winfrey of therapy and be like, you get a therapist and you get a therapist and everyone gets a therapist. The reality of it is, though, that individual therapy is oftentimes unavailable or cost prohibitive. It's just not available to everybody. And that's where group therapy comes into play, because I think that group therapy is much more efficient. You can reach bigger populations at the same time. It's more cost effective. It's typically not as expensive. Group therapy obviously does not eliminate the issues that you run into with individual therapy, but it does mitigate them, I feel like. And then one thing that I do want to touch on from this slide is the relational information that does not get observed in individual sessions. I have had, and I'll use one client as an example. I have had a client who in individual sessions was kind of a model client. He was engaged and always very appropriate, and seemed to be insightful and thoughtful and considerate and all those things. And then I got him in a group session, and it was like a light switch flipped. Like, he became a completely different person. And I would not have ever known this had I not seen him interacting with other people in a group setting. He became very, I don't want to say crass, but very inappropriate at times, and then would be shocked that people would respond to him in certain ways. And I wouldn't have that information had I not had him in group therapy setting. So I think that there's a lot that's offered in the group that you don't get in a one-on-one setting. Additionally, groups allow you to work, in the here and now. Like, let's look at the dynamics between the group members. Like, what problems are we running into? And then how are those problems being manifested in your other relationships? And then it does offer an opportunity for trust building. A lot of, at least with substance abusers, I know a lot of them struggle with trusting people. So this provides an opportunity for them to be able to practice that. Okay, let's talk about some limitations. Some of these have already been brought up as well. Limited privacy and confidentiality. While the therapist is bound by HIPAA laws, the clients aren't. There's nothing that stops them from going out and sharing what they heard in group with somebody else. And that creates a lot of problems, especially when you're trying to build trust with people. So what I've done historically with this is I just make it very clear that if people in the group share things that are said in group outside of group, then they will not be invited back to the group. They have to respect that privacy. We have to create a safe place for everybody to be able to share and be vulnerable without fear of, who's going to hear that information. So in that vein, a loss of trust can occur. A few of these things, this might be my bias that's coming out, but I feel like a few of these limitations may actually present as opportunities for further therapeutic intervention. For instance, you could call clashing personalities a limitation, but I would say that provides an opportunity to help people learn to work with others with different personalities, because the reality is sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to work with people that you don't necessarily get along with, and you have to do so in a civil way. Less flexibility with scheduling. If you're doing group therapy, it's a set day, a set time, whereas individual, and you have to, everybody has to adhere to that. Whereas with individuals, you have a little bit more flexibility. You're just working with one person. And then somebody else mentioned this, that it allows unmotivated individuals to kind of hide from or avoid their issues. So if they're not pulled out in the process and they're not prompted, they could just go through the whole thing quietly without ever addressing the issues that they need to. And then lastly, the level of intervention is not as focused as it's going to be for any one single person. I would argue this as well at some point during some times, because I've had groups, and especially for like IOP, where it's a set amount of time that they're coming. We have our are people in IOP here for 10 weeks. That's 30 groups. And if I only have 6 participants, I can guarantee you that we can dedicate 2 or 3 sessions to one person if that person has something they need to talk about. You know, we can make them the focus of that group. But again, it's not the individualized one-on-one. All right. Any questions or comments on any of that? Okay. So now I want to hear from you guys again. What type of clients or patients do you anticipate would benefit from group psychotherapy? And on the flip side of that, who would not be a good candidate? Who would you say should probably not be in groups?
People suffering from bipolar disorder.
Would be good candidates?
Nope.
Or bad?
People that are bipolar disorder sometimes can cause more trouble for them than solution. Although if the therapist is very skilled, can help them to process their feelings. And people that they are not good for groups are borderline personality disorder.
I think that's interesting that you say that it's not good for those with borderline, because I've actually read some research on this, that it can be an effective treatment modality for those with borderline personality disorder. It just requires a therapist with very good boundaries.
Definitely somebody who is very well trained in DBT, but it has to be a group that is contained for them, not just put it into a regular educational group or any group that you have 1 or 2 of those with another 8 members, they can be trouble.
Yes, correct. And that's actually something I didn't mention earlier with the different types of groups. There are homogeneous and heterogeneous groups. So homogeneous groups would be like what you're talking about, where you have everybody in that group has the same issue that they're dealing with. So in this case, it would be borderline personality disorder. And they're all working collectively on that same issue. Heterogeneous groups would be a mixture, right? Where you have some people that might be there for depression and some people that might be there because of anxiety or suicidal ideation, or some might be for substance use. So there is a difference between homogeneous and heterogeneous groups, and you have to take that into consideration when you are picking your candidates, you know, who is appropriate for this group. Okay, so as far as inappropriate, again, my bias is going to come out here because some of these I would argue could actually be appropriate candidates. It just depends on the type of group and the individual circumstances. But obviously, if you have clients that are in crisis or that are actively suicidal, they probably need a higher level of care. So they're probably not necessarily going to be appropriate for an outpatient group. Those with violent or aggressive histories, again, this is kind of on an individual basis because there are groups run for perpetrators of domestic violence. They are very psychoeducational. You know, they don't allow straying from what they talk about, and those are beneficial, and they've been shown to be beneficial. Severely antisocial, severe social anxiety, impulsive people, recent trauma survivors. This was another one that I wanted to address, just because I have seen how this can be beneficial for recent trauma survivors, again, in a homogeneous group setting. I told you guys that I did my graduate work in Oklahoma. And for those of you that might not be aware, Oklahoma is pretty well known for its weather, specifically the tornadoes. And back in May of 2013, I think it was, they had a really nasty F5 tornado that went through Moore, Oklahoma, which was just like 10, 15 minutes north of where I lived. But it did like $2 billion worth of damage, and it claimed the lives of 24 people. So it was a massive tornado. And it was a very traumatic experience for everybody out there, as you can imagine. And the one thing that I saw after that happened was multiple local agencies began running groups for these trauma survivors, for these people that had experienced this trauma. And they were very, very successful, despite the fact that these were recent trauma survivors. The times that I would say this is probably not appropriate for a recent trauma survivor would be if you have, it's not a homogenous group. You have a heterogeneous group and you have one person in there who has recently suffered a trauma, and somebody in that group might not be aware of it and completely trigger them in really unhealthy ways. But I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts? Any thoughts or questions on this? Okay. So we're just going to get to the conclusions. Essentially, in a nutshell, group therapy is great, so go and do it if you're not already. But really, it can be an invaluable tool in the treatment of many disorders. It comes in different forms, so you do have to be certain that you're selecting the right type of group for the right client, right patient. You get a lot of information from groups that you wouldn't get in individual sessions. And while it's beneficial for most, sadly, it is not beneficial for all. There are limitations to it. That is all that I have for you guys. I did include, in case you're interested, some references. But I'm happy to field any questions now or additional comments or thoughts that anybody might have.
Quietness.
Sorry, what was that, Michael?
Just quiet.
Oh.
Yes, I do have her slides and I will email them out to everybody that attended. There any other questions? Again, if you're looking for the CE credit, what we'll do is, one sec, I'm just going to, okay. If you will, I'll send you an evaluation form. On there, we'll ask you for a code word. It's going to be that group 9121 is going to be the code for the evaluation. And I have to do this, if you guys are all wondering, I have to do this for the state. They have to prove that you stayed to the end. And that's why we give the code word at the end. And I can always go back to the state and say, we gave it to the end. So I took attendance at the beginning. I gave the code word at the end. That's proof that you stayed through the whole thing if you get audited. So if you have any questions, there's my email. If you want to ask Tanya any questions, I can get you her contact information and everything. And thank you for attending. If you need to contact us about anything, if you've got questions on patients and you want to do a little consult and ask us some stuff, let us know. We're here to help. We know there's issues out there. We know as the kids are coming back to school that there's things going on. I have to tell you, and I know most at the hospital feel this way. I had a friend who disclosed to me that their 20-year-old son committed a suicide last week. And that's what breaks my heart, is when we've got resources in the community, in the areas that can help, but when we don't always know, we just can't help. So we know there's a need out there. We just can't get to everybody, and sometimes you need to reach out to us, and we're here as a resource for you guys for things that you need. So please reach out to us if you're needing anything, and if you're needing any help. We've got all kinds of resources, med management, our IOP groups, obviously the inpatient that we do. And I have to say, I think our program is one of the best in the state. because of the results. I can't tell you, hearing from a therapist the other day, how they had a little nephew that had to go into inpatient, and they said after the inpatient process, while they were with us, they revealed an incident that happened 4 years previous that no other therapist was able to get down to. I truly believe that our programming is in place to hit those kind of situations. So if not, thanks for coming. Please be safe, and I'll let you know when we're doing another one. So thanks for attending. It's good to see some of you guys, especially when you showed the cameras. See some faces. Cleo, you're still on?